Southern California is still being absolutely ravaged by wildfires as we speak. While I often criticize California, its leaders, and its politics, Los Angeles still holds a dear place in my heart. I called it home for 3 beautiful years, and I still have many friends in that area. And my heart breaks for them, for their pets, for their homes, for their loss. There is no silver lining in a disaster like this one, but there are moments that remind us of the beauty of the human soul. Now, this video captured one of those moments when a fireman took time to console a stranded dog found wandering in a neighborhood. Thank goodness a local rescue later found that beautiful dog and brought it to safety. And God bless that firefighter for everything he did as well. And while those moments are touching, we do have to have a difficult conversation about the management or the lack thereof that got LA County into this mess, or at least made it that much worse. This week, Donald Trump weighed in on part of the problem, and it's an issue he's been talking about for quite some time, actually. And here he is addressing this issue before the election on the Joe Rogan podcast.
They said, "We have no water." I said, "Do you have a drought?" "No, we don't have a drought." I said, "Why don't you have no water?" "Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land. Water for your forests. You know, your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You know, you could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires.
And he's exactly right. While the so-called leaders of California blame everything on climate change because it's easy, ambiguous, and absolves them of responsibility, the blame more accurately rests on their shoulders. But it's not just the damming and the water issues, it's also mismanagement of the homeless crisis. Now, my guest has been documenting this trend for over a year. That's Pacific Coast Highway. It's lined with RVs and campers that should not be there. They're a fire hazard and an obstruction, but yet there they stay. And what about some of the homeless individuals themselves? We don't know who started these fires, but other fires in LA County, many of them, have been at the hands of homeless people. There's a whole lot to dig into. Let me welcome back Venice, California Neighborhood Council, Soledad Ursua. All right, Soledad, I've been following you, obviously, on X. I was so happy to have you here in Nashville a while back over the summer. And you're the first person I thought about because all the things that you talked about really coming to play now as you're dealing with this horrible fire crisis. I want to start with the response from the so-called leaders, whether that be Joe Biden, Gavin Newsom, Mayor Karen Bass, who, thank goodness, she finally decided to come home at the taxpayers' expense, by the way. But what do you think of the management of this crisis so far?
Hi, and thank you so much for having me back on. And I just want to say that, my heart is breaking for everyone in Los Angeles today, especially those who have lost their home and their belongings. I've been actively watching the situation. I'm in Venice, so I am south of the fires, but many of us have been instructed to keep an emergency bag below us or with us in case the fires shift. And we're seeing that even last night, the area of Hollywood had to do emergency evacuations because we just don't know what direction the fire will go in. But I'm watching all of these news conferences and I see all of our elected officials up there. We see Gavin Newsom, we see Mayor Karen Bass, who, mind you, just got home from Ghana, Africa. She was on a taxpayer-funded junket to see the presidential inauguration there. She just returned. We see all of our LA County supervisors, and all I am hearing from them is that it's not their fault. That's the only thing that they will admit to. But when you look at this disaster, I mean, these are, serious winds, the Santa Ana's, what we're dealing with. So this really is a disaster, but it didn't have to get that bad. And this is really a crisis of negligence in the city, poor management. What was most shocking to me was the revelation that there's no water in the fire hydrants. So how are you supposed to fight a fire without water? That was something that came out yesterday, I think, by Rick Caruso. He was the first one to report it. He had previously run for mayor against Karen Bass, and unfortunately he lost. He would have been a much better mayor. But once he reported that, you see the press try to discredit him and say that it wasn't true. But slowly and surely, we're getting more reports that there is no water in these hydrants. And that is likely the main reason that this fire has gotten so out of control. And I believe that as of right now, there are 4 active wildfires in LA County, and we just don't have the manpower to fight it.
Yeah, it also doesn't help when you cut about $18 million from your fire department budget. Wow, what a great choice. Glad that they're spending it all on woke policies and DEI initiatives. Oh, that whole BLM defund everything movement probably didn't help either. You mentioned the water and the fire hydrants. You know, I was actually surprised to see Anderson Cooper ask California Governor Gavin Greasy about this in a news broadcast, and his answer was really, really startling, even by Gavin's standards. Let's take a look at this one in case you haven't heard it yet, Soledad.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, it ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have
Oh, well, there he goes. Well, you know, it's not up to me to figure it out. I'm the governor of California, but the locals, they're going to have to figure that out. The local officials, it's going to be on them. And also, this isn't dissimilar to other things, which seems to be a repeated narrative from California Governor Gavin Newsom. It's never his fault. He always wants to be there to get the photo op. He's got a photog on salary, by the way, that's also being paid for by the taxpayers. That's another issue. But, you know, what do you make of him going down there to take photos of himself carrying, and then he's asked a very basic question, and he gives a non-answer?
I mean, it's tone deaf, and it's just shocking that he would even admit that. But again, we see that these leaders, he literally is the top official in California, just say that it's not my fault and just kick the can down the road. That is literally what every single Democratic elected leader is doing in California right now. But what's really interesting is I'm glad that Anderson Cooper was out there to sort of catch this. You know, we didn't see him respond to other emergencies, such as the hurricanes of North Carolina, but they are out in Los Angeles right now, and they are documenting the gross negligence and the failure of basic infrastructure for public safety. So many people, again, tried to discredit this, that there was no water in the fire hydrants. And I want to bring to your light what happened in January 2021. So this was, 4 years ago. A fire happened on the Venice boardwalk. It was a cooking fire from the nearby homeless encampment, but a 2-story, 26,000 square foot commercial building caught fire. When the firemen came out, they tapped into the hydrant and they found out it was dry. The building did burn to the ground. The fire department said that it was not the sole source of the fire hydrant as to why it burnt. But that was the first time that I ever learned that there could be dry fire hydrants in the city. And so I'm shocked now to hear that, it's in Palisades. And I think that there needs to be serious investigations into what's really going on with our infrastructure, because infrastructure is something that Democrats love to talk about. They champion it because it's more money for them. But now I'm starting to wonder, do we even have the infrastructure? Has any of the money that we've ever received actually gone towards this? What if it turns out that none of our fire hydrants in the city are working, and we're just seeing a failure in real time that has led to just devastating consequences?
And it's just amazing. We hear California Governor Newsom bragging about California being the 5th largest economy in the world, but you don't have fire hydrants in the nation's 2nd largest city that have water in them. Wow, seems pretty basic to me. I also want to talk about perchance how these fires started. We don't know. We don't know the source. Obviously, the wind's making it much worse. Low humidity, the perfect conditions for this kind of a firestorm to break out. But you and I have talked about this before. And again, we don't know how these started. But whether this is the source of this fire or it's just an ongoing problem, you mentioned the homeless encampments and the fires they start, whether it be for warmth or whether it be because of infighting. I was in Venice in 2021, I believe it was, right after COVID in California. And the homeless were still sleeping on the beach there in tents, and they were firebombing each other by night over turf wars over drugs. So this is an ongoing problem that you've really shown a light on. But even if homeless people did not cause these particular fires, there's a big concern about exactly what's happening and the source of these fires. Can you speak to that a little bit for those who haven't heard this theory at all?
Definitely. And, even when you look at just what's going on, most of the time these are homeless related fires. Just a few weeks ago, actually, we had a fire in Malibu. It was the Franklin fire. So we are just recovering from that. we have not been given the cause of the fire. And so when we see city officials telling us that it's still under investigation, it is more than likely human related. It's arson. There usually needs to be an ignition. And what happens is the officials, they delay and they delay to basically get rid of the outrage from when it finally comes out. We see that happened with the Skirball fire. This was several years ago. This was a massive fire that jumped the 405 freeway. Also, there was apocalyptic scenes that came out, destroyed homes. So this is something that I think maybe 9 months later, it came out that it actually was a camping fire. And so officials, it's just too damaging for them. They don't want to admit it. So they just delay the findings, they hide it. And really, they're just not doing their job. There are many things that the city can do proactively to reduce some of these fire risks. For example, the video that I, took of PCH Highway. So those are about 40 plus RVs there. They have highly combustible items. They have propane tanks, grills, generators. They're not supposed to be there. It's all illegal camping. So if the city took fire safety seriously, they would abide by their own fire code and they would remove these encampments, because all that is fuel for a fire. And once there's a fire, these neighborhoods go up in flames. So again, we see that the city is not taking its own fire code seriously. We can't trust them. And anytime they tell us that, they deny, even today I heard people were asking what was the source of the fire. They say it's under investigation. So we may not know for several months. We may never know the cause.
And you've mentioned this before. What do you think the chances are if a human did start it? Maybe a homeless encampment, maybe a homeless person, an individual, in that realm. What do you think the chances are that they call it a debris fire or something of that nature? What do you think the chances are that they don't fully tell us and are not fully transparent with exactly who started it?
Well, today they're calling it a vegetation fire.
Oh.
But Venice Beach, what we see is they call these fires debris fires, which are trash fires. And it's just a new name to cover up homeless fires. The city actually started classifying them as debris fires because it just became too embarrassing for them. A report came out by the LA Times, which showed that over 50% of all fires in Los Angeles are homeless related. And more than 24 are started each single day by the homeless. So this is one of the reasons that the city started reclassifying the names. We've even heard the term tree fire. Oh. And trees don't just catch fire. It is not climate change. Somebody needs to put a light and ignite the fire.
I have to ask, too, your friends in California, I'm sure you have a mix of ideologies that you're friends with, probably a lot of liberal folks. I mean, Venice, very liberal area. California, by and large, very liberal, very Democrat. With all of this happening and the crisis and the mayor being in Ghana and Gavin Newsom with his crap answers to these questions and just the way that this whole thing has been managed, do you have friends on the liberal side that are openly frustrated or even openly willing to maybe change their vote next time due to the way that this has been handled and managed?
Most of my friends or most people in Los Angeles City are very frustrated at the local level. I find, though, that when we go to the state level, they fall back in Democratic marching orders and they defend people like Gavin Newsom. We had the chance to recall Gavin Newsom, and I was at odds with probably 95% of the people that live in my neighborhood. And so they are willing to call out hypocrisy and negligence at the local and the county level, but not when it goes to the state level and definitely not at the presidential level. So hopefully this is something that will open up people's eyes to show that, the fish rots from the head down, that this is really the Democratic Party. This is just their, vision of negligence, putting DEI first, and they never actually do their work, which is public safety. That's all it's about. So I hope this is something that really wakes people up, that people need to vote better.
And they like to blame Donald Trump, who's not president, which is what I find amazing. Like Gavin Newsom is like, oh, how dare he politicize this on one hand, and then he says like climate change did this on the other hand, which is really amazing to me. Donald Trump's not the president, isn't his fault. And when he says he's going to cut funding from California, what he's saying is we're not going to continue to fund your disaster relief and other things when you do things like fail to manage your water properly in such a way that would make these disasters, maybe not prevent them, but would lessen the damage and increase the ability to respond. So I think the incoming president is well within his rights to say, you guys better get your act together. Although this is under your jurisdiction, we're not going to keep bailing you out when your mismanagement is causing devastation. Good for Donald Trump for saying something. He should say the same thing about sanctuary city policy and the same thing about the homeless crisis, and I hope that he does. Next thing I want to talk to you about, I've been watching these press conferences that, some are doing a good job, others are not. I feel like it's a lot of fluff, and I know that they all want to get in their moment where they can say, like, come together, and that's great. Everyone needs to come together. Getting very little light on the information, I feel. I've also noticed that they have, on many occasions this week in their press conferences, talked about the looting that might be occurring. Obviously, a lot of these areas being burned down are very, very wealthy areas. And although the homes are in ashes, there's probably some still expensive belongings, things left behind that those folks that are looting are preying upon. And I think it's wild to me when I hear Los Angeles city officials absolutely shocked that people are looting when they have cultivated a culture of lawlessness in that county for at least the last 10 years. Are you shocked that they're shocked by the looting?
No, and what's funny is that they're trying to act tough. They're up there saying that we will not tolerate this. We don't prosecute. So of course there's going to be looting. Where it's really bad, what I understand, is in Santa Monica, because, right up north, the Pacific Palisades, those have burnt. And so in Santa Monica, north of Montana, these are $20 million plus homes. They are under evacuation orders. The homes have not burned, but many of the residents have taken refuge. So those are really the homes that are likely going to get looted. And it's an opportunistic time for criminals. We live in a lawless society. Criminals are never held accountable. We simply catch people and release people. We don't prosecute anymore. We do have a new DA in town, but the city is just overwhelmed at this point. And so it's just hysterical to watch them up there saying that this will not be tolerated. Don't even think about it. Don't you do it. I mean, the criminals just see the opportunity here.
Yeah. Well, in Florida, when this kind of thing happens, they have their sheriffs and others say, I wouldn't try it because you're probably going to be shot by a homeowner. And I think that that's the kind of tough talk that needs to happen. In California, when they say don't loot, it's like, really? I understand Prop 36, good for California for passing Prop 36, but there's still plenty of people that feel that they can get away with it with just a slap on the wrist, even if they are actually arrested for their theft. If it really goes the full way and the full consequences, I'm not sure if that's actually playing out. Hope it is. Not going to hold my breath. But also when you have 2020 in that area of Santa Monica being looted by BLMers, and they didn't seem to have a problem with that, but now it's like, but this time don't loot. It's like, really? I guess sometimes looting is okay and you look the other way, and other times you're going to get real tough on it. LA is just such a freaking mess, and so is California. And I pray for Californians, and I pray for Los Angelinos, and I pray for all of y'all, and that everything is okay and that there's not a loss of life. We heard a couple lives lost so far, potentially. But I'm just wondering, moving forward, what California does to have a reckoning with itself. Are you seeing any positive movement in that state?
I will say that I've been watching these press conferences and I see a turn or just shift in the way that reporters are talking to Mayor Karen Bass and some of the elected officials. They're actually trying to hold them accountable. I've heard some LA Times reporters asking tough questions, and it's pretty shocking because for the longest time, the media has just babied Mayor Karen Bass. She is their DEI queen. And all of a sudden, people are asking her why she decided to go to Ghana for this trip, why she didn't think ahead. And they're actually pointing out that she is, in fact, the mayor of Los Angeles and the person in charge. So I am very shocked to sort of see this turn that's happening, where just reporters out there that they are actually, when people come out and say that the fire hydrants are dry and people try to call those myths and dispel that, they're actually following up with questions and they're pointing it out. So this may be one of those moments where that basically you can't hide it anymore. So I'm quite shocked to see that.
Oh, it's great to see. And I think Mayor Karen Bass, when she's even asked about it, she just doesn't answer. They're like, should you have been in Ghana? And it's like, just no answer, just nothing. She has nothing to say whatsoever. When Gavin Newsom is pressed, he just makes up some crap that comes out of his mouth because he's so good at it. He says a lot of words without saying anything at all. That must be a California thing because Kamala Harris does the same thing. God bless you guys if you get rid of Gavin Newsom and then you install Kamala Harris. I mean, at that point, I hope you get out of there because things are going to get so much worse. If Gavin's bad now, imagine Kamala trying to be unburdened by what has been. I mean, California, just boy, might as well secede or start a new area with like-minded folks like yourself. Soledad, I am praying for all of you. Thank you so much for everything that you put out on social media and enlightening people to the real problems that you're experiencing, and for doing your best to speak truth to power and put some common sense for those other Californians who haven't found it yet. I really appreciate you. I pray for your safety, and thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Always, always. Thank you so much. All right, folks, that does it for this episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless for the entire week. California, we are praying for you, and we are praying hard. I promise you, we criticize your leadership, but we're still praying for each and every one of you. That does it for us from Nashville. God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.